I'm here to talk to you today about the spiritual discipline of solitude. Now, when you first hear that word, you probably have a whole bunch of different connotations about it. You might think it sounds like isolation or loneliness, but in fact, it's one of the most important disciplines we can have, and it's the one that really changed my life as a whole, especially after I started studying a little bit more about it in college. The first time I really started to come across this, I was thinking about what it was like to prepare for ministry, so I decided to look at what Jesus did to prepare for ministry. And as we know, he went off to be prepared to be tempted and went off by himself for 40 days, and he decided that it was a good idea to be alone and by himself. And as I kind of took that into account, I was like, well, usually what we're taught is to prepare for something, we need to go talk to our friends, talk to people we trust, talk to our mentors, and to focus on them. But Jesus never really did that. And then as I started to look at his ministry a little bit more, every time he got tired and needed to refuel, it said he went off by himself. Luke 5:16 says Jesus often slipped away to be by himself, to pray, to be alone, to be with the Father. And I think that one of the tragedies that we have in our modern culture is that we never go to the Father anymore to get information. We go to our friends, we go to a godly person instead of going to God himself. So the spiritual discipline of solitude is all about how to get alone with him. When I first started doing this, I was going to college, and I was at Palm Beach Atlantic University in West Palm Beach, Florida. It was beautiful there. It's a busy town, and I had a busy life. I was going to school full-time, working full-time for the university, and traveling and speaking. And so being alone or having time by myself was never happening. I never did it. And then I started to really think about what it was like to do this. And I started reading a book by Richard Foster called The Celebration of Discipline. And in that book, he talks about the need to get away to spend time with God. And so I decided that I was going to try and do that. My first couple attempts were being away from my friends and going to some other place where I could sit and just kind of be by myself. And I found out that very quickly everybody found a way to find me in those times. So after a week or two of trying it, I decided I'm going to go off by myself. I found a secluded spot that was not known to most of the community that overlooked the intercoastal waterway. I got to see the whole entire city. And this became my place. I went there anytime I needed to talk with God. And to be honest, is really the first place I remember actually conversing with God, having conversation, being able to speak to him and to hear back from him. And I think it had a lot to do with eliminating all my distractions. Now, I'm a single guy, so I don't have a family or kids to worry about. I don't have a wife to kind of be a part of everything I do. So solitude's super easy for me. I can break away whenever I want to, which means that solitude needs to be super intentional for you. Intentionality behind this discipline is important, because we can find ourselves isolated pretty easily. That's to be off on our own in a forced state where we don't have anybody around us that we can really be with, and so that leads to loneliness, whereas solitude leads to accompaniment. It leads to being fulfilled. It leads to being filled up. And so when we see the difference between those two, it's healthy to see what the bonuses of each one of those are. So solitude. Once you're off and alone by yourself, there's a couple things that I've found to be very helpful. To pray out loud, not to pray silently. To actually speak and converse, because there's no one there to really hear what you're doing and to really understand what's going on. So you can just have your own real conversation with God. Another thing that I found it's helpful to do is to not bring a book, to not bring scripture, but to really just actually have something that you're focused on your way out there in the first place. Have a question that you're needing answered. Have a desire that you're wanting to see fulfilled. Take the time to really investigate God, to wonder about him, to just be all about him. The discipline of solitude changed my life. It's where I first was able to talk, first able to hear, and I think it can do the same thing for you. Our job as youth ministers, as pastors, can be a very draining one. So the need to be filled up is there, it's existent, and if we ignore it, that's when bad things happen. So my advice, my one thing I would love for you to take from this conversation is to make sure you find time to be alone, and not to be alone by yourself, but be alone with God.